I was working pretty much nonstop. And it wasn't until about 2 months in of that hustle time where I decided, hey, it's time to switch over. And it was getting a little overwhelming.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast, where we'll be discussing the struggles and lessons learned along the journey of a seven figure entrepreneur. Today, I have the great pleasure of welcoming our guest, Neha Gupta, with college students. Neha, welcome.
Thank you so much, John. It's so great to be here.
We're just excited that you were willing to jump on and join us on the call today. Well, I don't want to waste any more time, so let's just dive right in. Neha, as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, please share with us your journey. Where did you start from? Where have you gotten to? And maybe share a few key lessons learned along the way.
Absolutely. So, as John shared, my name is Neha, and I'm the founder of College Shortcuts. And what we have done from where we started over 15 years ago to where we are today is nothing short of a miracle. Um, when I first started this business, I was working as an account manager at a website business where we helped companies to build websites, and I wasn't very busy. I'm always someone that likes to be doing something. Just a little background on me, I'm a bit of a nerd. I was at the top of my class in high school. I went to Rice, I went to UPenn. So I like to really go in deep into whatever I'm working on. And I grew up with two immigrant parents who were entrepreneurs as well. So I was very used to always doing something or being active. And so at my company, I wasn't always fully utilized. And so I ended up starting to do something after work. So 9 to 5, I'd go to the office. I'd always take my 12 to 1 lunch. I don't do that anymore, ever. But it was like I couldn't wait till 12 to 1 and I'd like run and go to a workout class and come back to my desk. And it was like a whole thing waiting for my lunch because I was so excited to not work. And then in the evenings, I would tutor. And that's really where College Shortcuts was born, was starting to tutor 5 o'clock to 9 p.m. And where my passion for tutoring actually started was in high school when I had the opportunity to tutor low income families in math, Spanish, and dance. And so I really found like so much joy working with kids, tutoring, teaching them something. I mean, it's so much fun. And so I stopped doing that once I went to college. I got serious, as they say. Went to go get an internship at Goldman Sachs, and then I got a job and didn't want to do Goldman, so I ended up working at a startup company, and it didn't feel great there. So I couldn't really find my path. So I went back to tutoring, and I told myself that no matter what happened, I would never leave my full time job until I made more in my side hustle. And that would, I would say, is one of the biggest key lessons from my perspective. You never actually realize how much money you will need when you're starting something on your own. And you do want a runway. You want a safety net of, personally, I'd say at least 6 months before you even think about leaving your full time job. So that's my little nugget in terms of being more of a planner or more strategic about it versus, hey, you know what? I'm just going to be an entrepreneur. Screw the 9 to 5. I'm just going to start. And then all of a sudden, you're making business decisions that actually don't align with your values because you need the money. And I
Right.
think that's where we see a lot of entrepreneurs get a little stuck. They may work with clients that aren't the right fit. They may not serve the client right. And they really, do a disservice to themselves. So while it is a hustle to do 9 to 5 and 5 to 9, and then on the weekends I'd also work about 6 to 8 hours each day, Saturday and Sunday tutoring. Sunday's always one of our hot days, 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. Everybody wants tutoring, right before Monday. So I was working pretty much nonstop, and it wasn't until about 2 months in of that hustle time where I decided, hey, it's time to switch over. And it was getting a little overwhelming. I was the one that handled all scheduling of appointments. I handled all the accounting and billing. I handled the phone number on the website, which my boss started to notice. Why does Neha keep going to the bathroom so much to answer, like, and take her cell phone, right? Like, you can't be too awkward, but it was like, what are you doing? And it got to the point where I was doing better um, outside of my work. And I liked it more. I think that's a big, big lesson that people don't think about. Like, I liked it
Yeah.
more than what I was currently doing. I also really had a hard time because I had two parents that were CEOs and entrepreneurs. I wasn't raised in an environment where people worked at a job. So I never understood hierarchy well. I was the worst kid to raise on top of it, right? Because entrepreneurial kids are just you just can't. They're not obedient kids. They're the hardest kids to raise, but they end up being really great later on. But they're impossible. And so I was one of those impossible kids. Even though everything on paper looked good, we were fighting all the time because I was very hard headed. So, anyways, I ended up quitting my job and I cried in the CEO of that company's office, because the CEO was amazing, but I didn't really like the management. And I really didn't like that. Even though I had helped to bring in like a $40,000 client, like I was getting like told, like, you're not in sales, you're in account management. And I'm like, yo, revenue's revenue, like, let's do this. And they were constantly trying to stick me in a box. And I don't know how to operate in a box because of how I was raised. So I ended up quitting. And I remember when I left, I cried. And it was like solid 20-hour sob, because it was a realization that I would never be able to work for somebody else. And that, by the way, is a very hard realization. People think it's this like wonderful experience, and it's really amazing to be like, I'm out, bye, mic drop. No, that's not how it feels. And
Right.
also to know that I was going to leave my boss, and I was a great account manager, that he's going to have to replace me, and that's not always nice to do, right? So I understood from many different aspects what I was doing, and I think I really, admitting to myself I was going to be an entrepreneur was painful to me. I need to back up and explain why that was. And I don't always share this, but I'm going to share it here. So before this, I did work with my sister on an entrepreneurial business where we created baby clothes that were organic. It was like what we call our MBA. We paid for our MBA. And it was a very painful experience because after 2 to 3 years of doing it, we were just not making money. Like, between the two of us, we were not making money enough to ever support ourselves. While we were carried in Whole Foods nationally and we were sold in boutiques, it was around the 2008 crash. And so a lot of stores closed. People were not buying expensive organic baby clothes. They were buying what they needed. It was a very hard time. So I'm sure that's a factor to why it happened. But after that experience, that's why I went to go get a job. And I told everyone, I was like, I'm never going to be an entrepreneur again. I failed. There's no way like I would ever put myself through this stress again. And so I think that's why when I walked into the CEO's office and I quit, I was like, man, I'm going to be totally unhireable if I keep like trying to be an entrepreneur. And then, right. I was like, and I don't want to fail a second time because I'm not good at failure. But I will say, being an entrepreneur, I've gotten very good at failure in the last 15 years. So those are kind of the things that happen. And I think the big lesson in that whole experience for me, and I'm still like ancillary friends with this boss. Funny enough, we're both in an organization, and I don't think he ever thought that many years later, we would be in the same organization, both being entrepreneurs with similar like revenue requirements to be in this organization. So he has no hard feelings. I think it was more traumatic for me because I'm not used to quitting or letting
Right.
somebody down. But for him, he's very proud of me, anyways. What I will share is failure is something you have to get very comfortable with, like like you have to be totally great with failing constantly. And I know people say that like very casually, but I will say, one of my professors from UPenn, who was also a Harvard business professor, who helped to coin the term like fail fast, I think it's a very true aspect to it. Anyways, I leave the job. I start tutor. I'm a one woman show at first. I tutored 1,000 different homes in Houston, Texas.
Wow.
Eventually, hired 3 to 4 consultants, and we scaled. And it was epic. Like, I ended up making my first year salary within a few months of doing tutoring, because finals is a great time to open a tutoring business and have consultants and have the connections. And the big
Right.
thing was, like, most parents were like, "Ooh, like Neha's the brown girl that's like super smart at math and science and English and history." But like I was the kid that was really in reality like helping all the athletes in these high schools with their material, and I made it fun, and their grades were increasing. And the minute that was happening, moms talk to moms, talk to moms, talk to moms, and it really spread like wildfire. Well, I thought I'd be running a tutoring business my whole life. I was like, that's it. Tutoring's epic. So easy. I can do this. I can grow my team. But what ended up happening over time was that larger companies came into the game, and they dropped the rates significantly for tutoring. They also had way bigger, massive budgets online for advertising. And so they basically just ate our lunch. And this happened about 12 to 13 years ago. So my lunch is totally getting eaten and no one wants to buy us. No one wants to buy our services. They're like, that's expensive. I can buy, tutoring became less of the boutique agency of like who you're hiring coming to your home to. This is the
Right.
same as a plumber coming to my house, which is shocking because you would think that, you'd be more particular about it.
Right.
So the minute that happened, the other thing that was happening was my kids were getting older. To give you a sense, some of my friends on Facebook are the students I started with. They are married. Some are giving birth. Some are like 29. It's 32. It's weird. And I started with them in like first grade. So that just shows
Right.
like how long I've been doing this, which is crazy. But I end up pivoting. And that's another big lesson I'd say is that sometimes when your lunch gets eaten, you have to start looking around and deciding like what is the next step. um, and I think right now there's a lot of people needing to do that because of AI, and a lot of us are still archaic and not wanting to shift. So I think we're going to see a lot of pivots come through in the next few years as well. But at that time, I pivoted over into college admissions. And the reason why I pivoted was because one, my kids were getting older. And so all the parents were like, hey, can you help us with the essays? I'm like, sure, totally. So easy. And I was getting kids in left and right, top schools in Texas, especially UT Austin, Rice. And it was really easy for me because it's what I was really good at. Like, I just am very good at writing, creating stories, understanding how to pitch yourself in the admissions process. And so it was a lot of fun. Where I will say the biggest lesson I learned too during that time was who you surround yourself makes such a difference. And I started to surround myself with the digital marketing crew in Texas. So like I was in Houston and then I was in Austin for a little bit. And in Austin, I started spending time with all of these people that were digital course creators. They thought what I was doing was archaic in their mind. College consulting, one on one, in person. Why are you so not scalable? And I thought, no, like this is a very personalized service and this is not something you can create a course on. Well, lo and behold, I ended up creating a course because of who I was surrounded by. I ended up hiring a consultant who was incredible, who knew a lot about course creation, had helped some of the major names who had built 7, 8 figure businesses in courses online. And I started to build our audience online. Before we had no audience. We were just a website with a hideous logo, and it was fine because we had referrals and it didn't matter.
Right.
But at that point, we kind of like, again, there was a little bit of a pivot as well in its own different way. And I started creating a course online called How to Get into College. Everything I create is very literal, like Elite Private Tutors, that's a tutoring company, College Shortcuts. Like all my brands are not really unique, like Apple or Amazon, right? Like these cool names. I just end up being very literal in the way I make things. So the course was called How to Get into College or something like that. And so I started doing that, and Facebook at that time had a really low ad cost, low lead cost. I was able to find somebody who was good at Facebook ads because I totally was not good at that. And so I started building out my team from a digital perspective. We started working with clients all over the US, which was so weird for me. Um, and we were trying to educate the market on a service line that was not really known. I'd say in reality, only in the last 4 to 5 years post college admissions scandal did people understand what a college consultant was or even knew people were using it, or the fact that people start as early as seventh and eighth grade with their kids in building their profile narrative and career goals and career coaching. Most adults that are parents between their 40s and 50s did not have a career coach. They did
Right.
not have someone building out their extracurricular plans or finding the right summer activities to build a profile. They did not have to work on their soft skills. They hand wrote their applications. So we have this huge gap of what the parent thinks getting into college looks like, knowing it's competitive, and then realizing that their kid has to write like 40 pages of essays across a 10 school list. And so we were starting to educate the market more. Our sale went from, do you need a math tutor, to let me explain what a 12-month mentorship program looks like. What do we do with your student? Um, and also, like, why is the application process the way it is and why is it so competitive? So we
Right.
moved into much more of an educational sale, and I started attending lots of conferences. I attended traffic and conversion. I attended the digital nomad like events because I was starting to travel and work from my. I became like a laptop entrepreneur. I thought I was so cool. I was like such a cool cat. I was like so few and far between for being a South Asian Indian girl that could like travel and work. So I was having a really good time and I was loving what I was doing. But the truth of the matter was, I was working all the time and I still do. I'm not going to lie about it. I worked Monday. Was that, yeah, yesterday? Whatever. I don't care. I work 7 days a week and I'm pretty much on till 10 or 11 at night. Sometimes I take time off, but not really. I don't really care to. I love what I do, and parents want a response, and I don't mind. So that's truth. It does not turn off. There are times I wake up in the middle of the morning, like right before I wake up, and I'm trying to go back to sleep. I'm like, okay, what dream am I going to have so I can sleep? And it doesn't work. Like last night, came up with a whole concept idea. I was like, I'm going to teach kids how to write better. We're seeing bad writing skills. I'm going to create this class. This is me at like in the morning for 20 minutes, and then I'm like, just wake up, just wake up. So that's kind of how entrepreneurship can be. It's hard to turn it off. People talk about work life balance. I don't think it's true. I think it's BS. My husband is also an entrepreneur. He runs a company way bigger than mine, and he does not mind that I'm a workaholic, and he's a workaholic too. And it's great. Like it works for the two of us. Like we co-work out of the house. I've got my own like digital nomad in my house, right? Like we have a good time. We travel for work. Sometimes I'll do a speaking engagement. So I think there's a lot of fun things that can come with being an entrepreneur because it's yours. It's not anybody else's. You can be creative with it. And I'll say that one of the big things we realized when we made that transition into college shortcuts and then going nationally, for example, 98% of my clients are not in Houston, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't even really market here. And even though it could be I could run a whole business just in Houston. We just don't really focus. Where our markets tend to be, San Francisco, New Jersey, and then all the way around. So we get clients from all over the place. I have a kid in Ohio that, it's so random. He's out there. He seems like a total New Jersey kid or San Francisco kid, right? Like, so we meet kids from all over. We help them with their mentorship. We help them with their applications. And to date, we've helped thousands of kids in this process all over that we've never met in real life. Um, the other part that's really big that's different is my whole team is remote. I've never met my current team. I've met two of them in real life.
Oh wow.
It. Yeah, I've never met them in real life. Everything's on Zoom that we do. And I think most people think they need so much to start a business. In today's world, not much. You could build a Wix website, Zoom account, Facebook ads, and an email newsletter. And the amount of technology available today is unbelievable. So, from our perspective, where business is going is shifting and changing, but there's no diff from my it's not difficult to start a company. I think the big part that's important is how do you differentiate yourself and what are the things you're going to focus on. For us, we have niched down very tightly to the point where our team knows if a client is a good fit or not just based on the form they fill out. We know if the parent is going to buy or if they're just there to chat. And that's because we got very clear about the services we offer. And trust me, parents have lots of ideas of things they would love for us to do and tell us how they think we should do things all the time. But for us, we know exactly what we offer, and that's tutoring, test prep, mentorship, college applications, and then graduate school help as well. That's it. Those are kind of our four service lines, and we got really tight on it. I don't go into life coaching, I'm not a therapist. I don't go into family coaching. We're really clear about where we go. Now, is there life coaching infused in mentorship? Obviously, if you're going to work with me for 12 months or my team, and we meet
Right.
every 2 weeks about what you're doing, how life is going, yes, there's some of that in there, but we don't go too deep into like a therapy role of any sort. Um, we also have a type of student that we typically do well with. If you're wanting to go to a top college, I tend to attract students like me that are, top 10%, top 20%. These are smart kids. They're driven, they're motivated usually. They just lack the right coach to push them over to the next line of where they need to be. but it's really clear. We have very clear sense of our psychometrics, who our client is, the age, what they look like, what they think about, what their experience was getting into college, the student. We know so much that we can tell. I can tell even if I join my salesperson for a call, I can tell within a minute if it's a good fit or not, and I'll send a message like, "Hey, good fit, not good fit." Kid won't listen. I can tell already based on their body language, right? Like we know so clearly after doing hundreds of thousands, all these calls, we know who's going to be the right fit for us. And what I also have to say is one big thing that I would highly recommend is really be selective about who you choose to work with. Early on, when we first started, and I was doing every phone call and talking to every family, I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, we could totally do that. We can absolutely yes." Answers yes, and then we'd be like in the experience together, and the parents like, "Hey, like I also even though I'm at a Chinese restaurant, I also want spaghetti," and I'm like, "What are you what?" So really get clear about what it is that you offer and get very clear about who it is you want to work with. We have an internal name that I won't share, but we have a name for when the family is not a right fit and it's going to be a refund client. It's a joke that we tend to make almost every year, which we're like, are we going to get one of those this year? Is that one of them? No, I think we can make that go down. I think we'll be okay, right? Like we have internally a sense, and we've actually lowered our customer service complaint rate each year. I'd say two.
Oh, nice.
That's it. And the reason why is because I am heavily involved in the processes in business. There was a time when we had scaled heavily and we bloated up our team. Um, it looked amazing on the outside, but internally, we had a lot of customer service issues. It was like a bloated team, too many processes, breaking things into weird ways. And not only were we not doing great from a financial perspective either, because we were paying the team so much, but our clients also were not exactly happy with the work. So I think the biggest thing I've learned after more than a decade of entrepreneurship is, and my parents always said this because they've also experienced starting businesses. I mean, my parents had to close down businesses, walk out of build. I mean, they've experienced the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. And the one thing they always told me was number one, cash is king. Number two, I don't care about your revenue, I care about your profit. And so those are the two things that I have always operated my business on is around from a metrics perspective, not just in general, it's at least those two aspects. But then the third big thing my mom always has shared because they ran an 8-figure business at one point was small is better. And I think that's an anti-entrepreneurship thought when you've got 10x Grant Cardone, you've got Russell Brunson, who I love, and he's a good friend of mine from when we went to Kenya together building a school. You've got like one funnel away, and one funnel, by the way, the one funnel does work when you get it. But there's a lot of cool things that happen in entrepreneurship. But I think the big thing is that everyone is always so focused on like scaling. And the big thing that can happen that I think most people don't realize is entrepreneurship entrepreneurs tend to have a personality type that likes chaos a little
Yeah.
bit. And the minute, like when I had that huge team, they were like, we don't need you. We don't need you for calls. We don't need you for operations. You should go take that ceramics class. And so there was a year in my business where I was like taking ceramics classes, and like I wasn't really in the pulse of the business because that's what was required of going 10x. Even though it was not a great year for us, there was customer complaints and the team was like trying to scale, and there was all this stuff. It was like an ugly duckling experience that I think people are like, well, it's normal to lose money to gain money. And I was like, no, we're bleeding. This is very painful. And
Right.
we've got upset clients, and I don't like the way this feels. So from all of that, one of the things I've done, and I share it so openly with our clients, I'm like, look, there was a point in time where I had the feeling that I wanted to make, I wanted to be X. I wanted to have this many. I wanted to be the biggest agency in the world globally that does college admissions. I said, there was a point I had that as my goal. Now I don't care. We have a certain number of consultants on our team that I personally manage. I personally hire. I have no COO. I manage the whole process. I read every summary email of every student because I love it. And I still take on my own students. And I run a group mentorship program with 20 kids. That's my favorite part of my day. I mean, it's just amazing. And I have so much more joy because I didn't start this company to be obsolete in my business. I work with children for a living. Like it's a very like my business is it's like a very like lovey-dovey business, right? Like it's a service-based business. And for us, like it may not make sense. Like, why is the CEO emailing at 11 at night, or why is she like always involved? But the client knows like Neha's there no matter what. Like, team member gets sick, Neha's there. Team member's taking a while to respond, Neha's right there, right? Like, so that we've had like literally almost only recently one customer complaint because I also do the onboarding call for every family. I set the expectations. I have systems. I'm a very operator, integrator type of entrepreneur. So I'm not saying that everyone has those goals as an entrepreneur. I'm not saying
Right.
that everyone wants to do what I'm doing. And maybe, you know, maybe some people want like a set it, leave it kind of business. And I think that's totally great too. But I think for me, knowing my personality type, I actually think it's detrimental for someone at my productiveness to be taking ceramics class with 60-year-olds when I could be like really building new things. So, for example, like in our business, we're doing speaking engagements, which lights me up. Like it's really cool. I get to fly to DC and New Jersey, and there's families that want to host me. And I'm talking to a financial aid company. They're like, "Yeah, you want to do an event in Houston because they've got the Houston market down." I'm like, "I don't really market in Houston." They're like, "Okay, cool, let's do it together." You know, like people know us, but like I just don't focus because Facebook ads runs all over the US. So from
Right.
my perspective, I think the big thing too is like also figuring out what brings you joy. Now, I'm not going to say there are times where like I'm handling a bunch of emails or like even today has been a nonstop day and I'm like, "Oh my god, I need to start writing a list again." Like there's too many like little things coming up. But I'd rather have that personally than nothing. I also do know how to turn off. Like when I do travel, I turn off. You know, I set my calendar on the days that I want to do my calls with my students. So it's not that I don't have work life balance. I, outside of my life of work, I just want to be clear, I have a social life. I spend time with family. I work out 6 to 8 hours a week. I do two art classes and I volunteer at a place to make meals for kids under the age of 5.
Oh, wow.
So it's not that like I'm workaholic all the time. I still in my calendar, which looks busy to most, it still has the time for all the things that matter in my life, from health, art, giving back, and then my work, which is my I don't call it work really. It's like a hobby that pays me, right? Like it's an enjoyment. There's nothing more enjoyable. And I think for most adults, like if you got to work with a teenager that's not yours, and I clarify that because most parents are like, "Ugh," with the teenager. And I get it. My sister has a teenager right now and it's so hard. So I understand that family dynamic because again, I was a torturous teenager, which I think is a major reason why I created this company is just the sheer fighting that happened in my house and the difficulties we had. I think there can be a better way where you have a team. Also, being South Asian, like we really believe in the village approach. But when you move to America, everything's so individual and people are all competitive that you lose that. So, in a lot of ways, my team and I get to be that fun aunt or fun uncle that comes in that's like very educated and studies this all day long. That's like, hey, I think we should work on this project together. You know, there's nothing more fun than launching businesses. I have a lot of students that are interested in business. We've launched social media companies, we've launched skateboarding companies, we've launched, financial advice newsletters for students, we've launched nonprofit projects. Kids have written research papers on topics they're interested in. So, from our perspective, we really think we're really shaping the next generation to be the number one quality, which I think is important in entrepreneurship but in life, is confidence. And we're seeing a huge decline in teenage confidence. We're seeing a huge rise in anxiety and depression, but a
Right.
lowering in their confidence. And so when you can give someone their purpose or help them find a project or something they're passionate about outside of the normal schoolwork that's so boring, but something they actually really love to do, that builds confidence. They have something to chat about, talk about, share. It makes them more interesting in the admissions process, but it also helps them to start their self discovery journey. Most people listening, I don't know, they might be people that want to be entrepreneurs in their 30s that are like, man, I wish I had college shortcuts when I was a teenager.
Right.
And I do think it's really powerful to get a coach. I've had many coaches. Just another lesson I've had is I've had coaches all along the journey of business. Right now, I don't have one because I'm at a point where I don't actually really want to grow my business that much. I've dialed it in. I love my team members and I know exactly how to run it. And I'm not in a place where I need to step out of it in my time in life. But along the journey, definitely had coaches. I did not know how to make a digital course. I did not know how to build digital course to connect with Active Campaign, to connect with auto email systems. Build your team. It will cost a lot of money, but it is worth it. You can't do all of those steps. Um, and then I will say one thing that's interesting that most people may not realize. So we ran a company that did digital courses, which is what we call do it yourself. But over time, what we realized was that nobody wants to do it themselves.
There you go.
So people would buy the course, they'd fall in love with me, which I thought was so interesting. I had this naive view that the parent and student sitting there with popcorn on a Friday watching my videos about getting into college. And they're like, couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, I'm watching it, trying to get my teenager to watch it and do the workbook, Neha. And then they'd say, what do you cost? So it's interesting. We went from a service-based business where we were doing all the tutoring and we were doing all the consulting to then turning into an online digital course. And trust me, there were times I'd run webinars selling that course and we made 5 figures on a webinar. I'm not even I don't know what the ad cost was. So I'm not saying that it was 5 figures. It was amazing all the time. You have to subtract
Right.
all the costs, but then that's not cheap today at all. But in the end, actually, I have no idea if in today's world of advertising, if you can actually really make money on just a course, because the ad costs are insane at today's world. But anyways, what ended up happening, they did the digital course and they just say, hey, I still just want consulting. So now we changed the way we do business. The course is still available online for people to buy, but now we know it's done for you. Parents want done for you solutions. They want their life easier, and I explain it as you're the CEOs of your house. We now become the manager of this process. You don't have to manage the process. You don't have to meet with your kid every 2 weeks. You don't have to write summaries. You don't have to push along the timeline and execution. That's our job. We update you. And for most parents, they're like, yeah, that's priceless. I would love
Right.
that because it makes their life easier. So I would say the big thing too is that you have to be okay with change as an entrepreneur because like I thought I could just run my digital course webinar, and by the way that wasn't automated. I did 3 webinars a week every week for a full year live. That's a lot of webinars to do the exact same over and over. We were, I think, GoToWebinars like top 10 webinars globally at one point because of how many webinars we were doing. So
Right.
again, the work ethic that you have to have is hungry. I'm just a really hungry person. There's no question about it. I'm not that young anymore, and I'm still hungry, and I don't see it slowing down. There's always going to be another student that needs help. There's always going to be another parent that's like, I can't get my kid to listen. There's always going to be a need for what we do. And that's what keeps me up. That's what I think about in the shower. That's what I think about when I'm on the trampoline class. Like, how do we better serve? I'm always coming up with innovative ideas. They'll never veer too far off from what we offer. It
Right.
may be like a workshop I offer on how to write better, but it will never replace what we do. I always stick to the what I call a boring bread and butter of what we do. We are a boring business. You want to scale your business, you have to be very boring, very boring. And I think this is the part that most people don't do. They find really odd ways to keep themselves busy, but in the end, it's like even when Russell Brunson says, it's one funnel. I had 30 funnels at one point. It's just the one funnel. Um, and the boring can be very difficult for entrepreneurs because they want chaos or they want to play with things. Find
Right.
other things to be chaotic about, or find things within the business you can tinker and play with a little bit. Just make sure it doesn't drive your team nuts. But like I'm right now playing with AI a little bit. I'm playing with like a few different like I call them toys in my world. little things that I can tinker with. Um, no one really needs to always know about it, but it's like I may need that tinkering. For
Right.
example, like most people wouldn't fly to New Jersey and back in the same day to do a speaking engagement. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Cool. You got 60 families to talk to at your home. I'm here. I'm right here. I'm absolutely, you want me to serve at the highest level? I will do it. Right. Like that's my way of having a little chaos and fun.
There you go.
Um, but I'm in this 150%. I can't imagine doing anything else. I don't know what else I would do. I think if I were to do anything else outside of being an entrepreneur, I'd be an operations person. Like, I think that's the job that I would get because most people are like, how do you help hundreds of kids go through every step of applying to college and go through thousands of essays? I was like, oh, you have to be very systems operated, like a systems person to do what I do. Like, most people are like, I can't get adults to follow timelines. How do you get teenagers to do it? I was like, oh, teenagers are so easy. Adults are way harder.
Love that. Love
So,
that. Naya,
yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your story with us. What a journey you've been on. I love the golden nuggets that you've left with us. I hope those who are listening on this podcast picked in on those. You have to be willing to fail and be okay with it and be good at it. You have to be willing to change, adapt, and pivot based on what's happening. You have to be willing to not be afraid to narrow down exactly what it is you're offering, understanding exactly who your target customer is and what your offering is. And in your words, get it nice and boring, uh,
Yes.
just so that it's you got your bread and butter there to continue on. Just some fantastic nuggets that you've shared with us today. I appreciate that. And again, I hope that those who are listening on this episode paid attention to that. Um, Now, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, wanted to get a hold of College Shortcuts, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, if you go to collegeshortcuts.com, typically you can actually schedule a call with us right there on the site. It opens up a calendar link and you put your information in and you can absolutely schedule. And the last thing I want to leave with is just do it. I mean, that's just the truth. Like, just pick one idea and just start. I think that's the big thing I want to leave everyone with. I know I left a lot of other nuggets of what's been happening over the last 15 to 18 years of my life, but if I had never started, I'd never be where I am today. Like, and I can't imagine my life still being an account manager at a website firm. I There's no way. I don't think I could have done it for that long. So, if you feel an inkling, if you feel like you want to give a solution, if you feel like there's a problem that you feel like burning desire, my thing is always like get at least 1 to 4 customers and then you really learn the most. So just get started. And even if you're charging nothing to very little, which is what we did at the very beginning, go for it. Better to
Love
do
that.
something than to just think about it. I'm not into thinkers, I'm into doers, and I tell my teenagers that all day. You can think about what you wanna do, but you've gotta do something about it.
Yeah. Oh, love that. Love the intentionality around everything that you've talked about today. I think that that really is the key lesson that you can see through your passion. You're very passionate about what you do, and I can tell that it's something that you're just driven to continue to do, and you've expressed that just beautifully today. So thank you so much. Those who
Okay.
are listening in, if you've heard something today that you're like, oh, I really like that, take the time to put it into action. Don't just be excited about it now, but actually do the work, put it into action. You're gonna see the rewards that you're hoping for. And if you saw something on today's episode that you think somebody else that you know, hey, this person could really use this, go ahead and share it. Let's create some value for as many people as possible. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today on the Seven Figure Journey podcast. We've just thoroughly enjoyed having Neha here as a guest today, and till next time, get out there and get it done. See you, everyone.